When looking back at our target audience response for our first draft, it was very clear that they didn't really understand the storyline, and they thought that the ending was quite weird in correlation to the actual film, for the fact that the characters were all having a really good time and the boys decided to leave at the end. Now, for us, we thought, oh, this might be a clever idea, but now looking back at it, it didn't actually make sense with the film itself. It kind of separated the whole point to it, and the fact that we wanted the boys and the girls to be having a good time, and yet at the end the boys still decided to leave. It didn't actually make sense. We also found that people thought that a lot of the camera angles were simple and that we were kind of sticking to the same one, so there was no interesting view, there was nothing that was sort of intriguing with the camera angles, you know. It kind of stayed the same, so towards an audience it was just very basic, and it seemed as though they were kind of watching the same thing over and over again. You know, you had the simple close-up, mid-shot. It's just very simple and quite amateur. We found that also the target audience, although they found some bits funny, they weren't laughing at all parts, and that we found that it got a bit awkward, and that, you know, the bits, they were too slow, they weren't snappy, they weren't quick comedy, there wasn't bits where you had things in the background that were funny, that at each moment there was something to laugh about. It was quite slow. At the beginning of it, we had really simple text, really simple dialogue that we kind of added in the moment, so it didn't actually link to the story, it didn't create any humour, it was just right, put that in, see how that is. And then with the entire film itself, it didn't make it funny, it just added elements that were slow and quite boring, so things that were funny didn't seem as funny in the moment as they did for us. We also found that the target audience didn't like the swearing. There was a lot of swearing, which in the moment we thought, okay, if we're linking it to people who are 16 to 21, that's sort of the things that they have in their everyday language. But for a very short film, it was too much, and it got rid of the funniness, and it made it quite cringy, for the fact that it seemed as though the actors were trying to put the voices on, were trying to add the swearing for the target audience. It wasn't a natural thing, it wasn't natural speech. You wouldn't be swearing as much as that in a very short amount of time. So that's something that we had to remove when making the main film. We also found that lighting was an issue, and that blurriness was an issue, for the fact that some of the camera angles were blurry, so you couldn't see the facial expressions from every single character. You found that we were also blocking in the film. Characters were in places where they were blocking other characters, so not everyone was seen. So that was a problem, as you weren't having everyone on show, you were just having some characters, someone actually on the screen, which for a target audience is very unprofessional, and it doesn't make the film look very good, for the fact that you're literally blocking people who are meant to be in the scene. We also found that people didn't really enjoy the music. Some people found it cringy, some people didn't think it linked well with the film itself. The music, although we thought was so good, we thought that it was upbeat, it wasn't right with the film, and it wasn't right with the scene itself. For example, we had a party and we had the beginning, and for the beginning the music was quite slow. It wasn't as snappy and quick and you know, enjoyable as we did for the main film, where we added Toxic, which was funny because it's Britney Spears and, you know, it's a girly sort of song. But with Anorax, it was quite slow, and it added to the slow scenes that we had added in, so altogether it was quite boring. And also for the end song, we loved, which was Blue Eyes, which actually matched the dancing. However, the dancing wasn't needed, so the song itself wasn't really needed. We also found that we had edited in a really odd way. So you had the music that we were playing when recording in the actual scene, when we were editing and directing, we played it out loud. And in the film itself, we didn't take out the music, so we had the layer of the music from the actual scene we were recording on top of the music that we'd put on after in the editing process. So you had two different bits of music that were playing at the same time, but different parts of the song. So it was really, really messy. We found that in our first draft, people loved the characters, people loved the energy of the characters and the type of people, which is why we kept them exactly the same in the main film. We still had the same type of characters, the quirkiness, the weirdness, the confidence from my character Anna, the fun that is taken from every character in a comedy film, the over-exaggerated nature of the character, the personality that shines, that creates a comedy. We kept that because we found that the target audience loved it, but we did change and update things like the camera angles. In the main film, we were sitting and we were seeing what camera angles could look cool at this point. If we zoom in on a hand, if we go from the bottom, if we have an aerial shot or a split screen. We added a split screen because we thought that this would make it a more professional film, which it did. It made it look more advanced and people were more engaged because you're seeing different shots, you're seeing different angles of, the scenes. There's more to it, there's more elements to it. And as it's such a short film, you have to add more, because otherwise people aren't as interested in the film. You have to add more that is going to be eye-catching, is going to draw in an audience. We also changed all the music. We had Ladies Night playing when the boys went to the door, and this is funny because it's such a cheesy song, and also it's not a typical song that you'd have at a teenage party. It kind of adds to a sense of silliness and fun to the film because it's such an upbeat, fun song, but you wouldn't usually have it in that sort of situation. So it's been added for the effect of fun because it's not a realistic thing to happen. We also added in Toxic and Jonas Brothers 3000. Now, the year 3000 is a very popular song, and we knew that everyone would know it. Similarly to Toxic and Ladies Night, they're all well-known songs. Because of copyright issues, we had to get covers of them all, but they were still just as fun as the originals. And also Jonas Brothers are a very famous band, been known for all teenagers 16 to 21. They're very famous, and so having Year 3000, which is a popular song with everyone, and the Jonas Brothers, it's so fun and it's so interesting, and it just makes it cheers you up. It adds happiness and warmth to the film itself. So we knew we wanted to add in more slapstick comedy into our main film because in the first draft there wasn't enough comedy. It wasn't interesting, it wasn't engaging, it was too slow. There wasn't enough comedy elements to call it a comedy and to match it with the comedy genre. So we had things like people falling over, we had over-exaggerated facial expressions when it came to food, we had people over flirting, we had people having fun with each other. Everything was obviously enhanced, all facial expressions were enhanced because that's what happens in comedy. You need to show every single emotion to engage people, to make it more interesting, intriguing. You have to show every sadness, every happiness, every joy, because if it's too mellow, if things are too on the low, people aren't going to catch on to the comedy, people aren't going to notice it as much, which is why we had more things like people eating and talking with their mouths full, shaving their moustache, things that were just shown in every scene. There was something in every scene to make it funny, because as it's such a short film, you have to have things in every single moment to create the humour and to create the effect of a comedy genre. You have to have more camera angles that show the facial expressions, have more in the scenes themselves, having more characters, having everyone on show, having James be more quirky, be more weird, have me and Connor who were flirting with each other, that be big and our voices be higher and laughing and giggling. And then when they're having a storyline, an actual purpose to the film, we included a fun storyline that the dad comes home and catches them all and they all have to leave. There's something that people will understand as to why we have to leave the house, and that creates a purpose to the film. There's a storyline that people can follow throughout the film and understand, and inside jokes such as my orange legs, which are revealed later in the film. It's things like that that make it interesting. And although there are still some things that the target audience could see that was wrong with the main, for example, with my legs, they were still pale in the film because of the lighting itself. The lighting itself, as it was bright, it meant that my legs didn't show up as well. So that was something that needed to be improved. But overall, it was a drastic change towards or from the first draft. And also the lighting we changed completely. We had better camera work, we had better equipment, so that all the shots were clear and all the shots were professional and well done. And it meant that in comparison to the first draft, which was fuzzy and the lighting was low, it looked like a proper short film.